welcome to No Nonsense Nonprofits. Hi, I'm Sandy Ray, founder of Sandra E. Ray, where we alleviate financial headaches so that you can create a bigger impact. Today, we're talking about ethical dilemmas in fundraising. Now, I'm not a professional fundraiser, so I'm relying on the advice of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, the AFP. Now, they are the standard bearer for the profession, and they've been in existence for over 60 years. Fundraising and accounting work so closely together. Each affects the outcomes of the other. And any breach in ethical protocols by one affects the entire organization tremendously. So I want to talk a little bit about the AFP. As I said, they are the standard setter. They have ethical standards that were adopted in 1964 and amended in 2014. Now, in the comments, added the link to the professional standards list, but I just wanted to go over them very quickly with you. These are the broad categories. There's some very specific things in there that you will want to go to the webpage and read. But they're basically set to promote public trust and transparency. They address conflicts of interest. They provide guidance for solicitation and stewardship of philanthropic funds. They address treatment of confidential and proprietary information. And they put limits on commission-based compensation. Basically, the goal is not to have commissions based on a percentage of contributions. So you can read more about that on their website. So they were also kind enough to provide a multitude of examples of ethical dilemmas that I think sometimes are very interesting, and just talking about them helps us work through it. And the first one I want to talk about is a conflict with the board member. The example that they provided was basically the donation, the paperwork, doesn't always agree with the understanding that's passed to different team members and our board of directors through word of mouth. So from time to time, when we're looking at the paperwork and our just historical knowledge that's passed from person to person, we develop a conflict. In this situation, there was a nonprofit organization that received a $1 million bequest from a prior board member. And that board member who passed was good friends with another board member. And the other board member thought for some reason that they were able to use this bequest that the donor who passed said they wanted it to be endowed for the organization. So it was to start an endowment fund. This other board member wanted to use those funds as a source for a matching gift challenge for a capital campaign. Now, the funds were already received, so it's not like they're getting matched or anything like that. So the issue, there was obviously a conflict between the development director. He said, no, this is for endowment fund, and we're receiving these funds already. It's going to be endowed. This is not matching money. And the board of director who wanted to use it for the matching money. Well, the conflict exploded. It became very heated. The development director eventually got another member of the board chair involved, and the board chair talked to both parties, and eventually it was resolved. The recommendation here is to make sure that you train your board of directors on the donor bill of rights. And this is also provided by the AFP, and I have listed that in the comments, the link to that in the comments below, so that the board members understand that when donors do something with the expectation this will happen, that really does happen, and that everybody on the team is aware of what's going on. Another example would be raising funds for closed programs. Now, in this example, the development director said that they had applied for a grant and then it was decided to close the program. And then after the program was closed, the grant awarded and the check was sent and received by the donor. So the development director had to go back to the grantor and say, listen, We have this program, we closed it, but we would like to use the grant funds to cover the expenditures of the program in the past, from the time that we did the application until we closed it. And if you're not comfortable with that, obviously we'll be returning the funds to you. So you never want to be in that situation. I think the development director did the right thing, said, hey, can we use it for something else or use it for these older expenditures, or we'll return the funds. But the recommendation here is to be more proactive, to make sure that you have the funding in place before you initiate those programs so that you don't have to shut them down. And then here we are with a closed program and the funding, and we have to send the money back. The third one is an interesting dilemma. It's sexual harassment from a prospect. In this example, an employee was feeling very uncomfortable after meeting with a potentially large donor and felt like she had been sexually harassed. She went to her supervisor and discussed it with her supervisor. The supervisor offered to take over the solicitation and to make sure that the employee received the credit for finding the donor. The employee declined in this situation, thinking that she could manage the situation, but apparently she was not successful because she resigned a short time later. This was an unfortunate situation with no resolution. The recommendation here is to be proactive about workplace policies with the entire team, the board of directors, and potential donors, including our sexual harassment policies. Now, what should this supervisor have done? So should the supervisor approach the board member or the donor himself and said this behavior was not appropriate? Should the development director have reached out to the donor and said, thank you, but no thank you. We do not want your money. That is a tough one. But again, we're talking about ethics and it's not always easy. So ask yourself, what would you have done in that development director's place? And I think I would like to say we would decline the donation. Sometimes that's hard to do. So maybe you would have gone with an alternative and approaching the donor and asking for an apology for the employee. Moving on, something a little bit more mechanical, booking pledges without written confirmation. This is an ethical dilemma because we're trying to increase our donor numbers, our fundraising numbers, and we can do that by booking pledges. But pledges can only be booked in our accounting records when they're legally enforceable. And we've talked about this before. That means usually that those pledges are in writing. And with software integrations, pledges that are not legally enforceable may get booked, because if you booked these prospective donations that aren't technically legally enforceable pledges, they may get booked to the accounting system through the integration. So we really need to be watching for that. Our recommendation is to have a procedure about prospective donations versus pledges and have a detailed SOP for each. What is the standing operating procedure for pledges? Number one, is it legally enforceable? Do we have something in writing? And then move on from there. If the answer to that is no, then this is a prospective donation. And what is the procedure or the process for that? So we want to make sure that those don't get booked. We also want to make sure that all of the team members and the board members are trained on the ethical fundraising practices. So again, just making sure that everybody's aware of the ethical practices of organizations, just making sure that everybody is very clear, everything's transparent, we're all on the same page. And that really comes from the top down, the board, the management team, to all the employees. The fifth dilemma I want to talk to you about is donations for services or preferential treatment. Now, I think we're all familiar with the scandal in 2019 where 50 people were accused of bribing college insiders to get their children into prestigious universities. Now, from my understanding, I didn't follow it that closely, these were bribes to the individuals, but a promise to give a donation for something in return is also a bribe. And these disguised bribes coming in as donations are definitely unethical. So any donation that comes in with the understanding that the donor will receive some sort of benefit is not a donation. So I just wanted to bring that up. There could be some legal consequences there. You just don't want to do that. In fact, I was doing some reading and that some universities will not accept large donations around admissions time. It just doesn't look good. So to summarize, the reputation of our not-for-profit organizations is only as good as the integrity of our team members. That's our board of directors, our management team, our staff, our volunteers. Making sure that everyone follows a code of ethics is important. Financial transparency in the development department is as critical as in the accounting department. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions about today's topic or topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please put that in the comments below. We always appreciate your likes, and thank you for joining me today. Remember, creating a bigger impact starts with stopping the nonsense. If you're dealing with nonsense in your nonprofit organization, we'd love to help you cut through the noise.